Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. It is the dream team, Daryl and Mike. How's it going here, Daryl?
It's going okay. A couple minutes late, and it's all my fault. But technical difficulties. That's why we call our new video series, technical difficulties, because we have a lot of them.
Whenever you're doing anything live, it never really seems to work out perfectly. So we're here a couple minutes late, but we're here. So that's all that counts.
That's what matters. Yep.
So I guess before we get too deep into it, just a quick reminder, if you are here, hit that like, comment, subscribe button. Any sort of interaction is awesome for us. We do appreciate any sort of feedback we get. As you sort of alluded to, Daryl, recent video we put out this week, if you haven't checked it out already, it's part of Daryl's technical difficulties series. He essentially did a Q&A, answered some of the questions people had on his delivery videos over the last year or so. So we are pretty good at getting back to any sort of comments or questions you do have. So if you do have anything to say, let us know, because we love to interact with anybody here. If you're not able to catch us live, we are on YouTube within the day. And then usually within the week, we'll be on every major podcasting platform. So definitely check us out after the fact if you're not here live. So we got a fair bit of stuff to cover. Getting late in the season here, I guess it's early October. My club had the club wind up last weekend. I wasn't able to attend because royal cold went through my family. So as you can probably tell by my voice, the family and me aren't feeling the greatest even a week later. But we had our club wind up. So bowling's done here in Saskatchewan. I think you guys are probably pretty similar out there in Ontario. Is that right?
We're getting there. There may be some clubs in Southern Ontario that keep rolling until the very last minute. But I know my club's planning to. I think they've already started the greens closure, and they're probably just going to wind that up in the next week or two, for sure.
Yeah, I guess once you hit October, the weather's pretty erratic in Canada, specifically out my way. I think it's a lot worse than your way because
Yeah.
I think I've had memories in the last week or so that there was snow on the ground previous years. So we're getting into that territory out here in Saskatchewan for sure. But there has been some bowling going on in the country over the last week or two here. Last few weeks, I guess. Specifically, we had the last outdoor Canadian Championship, I guess, the year that would have concluded a few weeks back, the Canadian Senior Championships. That was the only Canadian Championship we had this year that was outside of Ontario. So that one was in Victoria, BC. It looked like from the photos, it was a pretty awesome event. I spoke with a couple of the players from Saskatchewan that ended up going and sounded like it was a really good time. The greens apparently were very good. They were running really well, and they were saying that almost every rink had like a true draw, and it was amongst the best greens they've played on in years. So I had nothing but positive things from the players that I spoke with. If we want to get directly into those results, on the ladies' side, the winners were Saskatchewan. So the team of Rachel Larson, Heather Howard, and Eileen McPherson from Saskatchewan ended up winning the gold medal. They had a pretty consistent week. They ended up taking out Team BCB, Sharon Baldwin, Kathy Harms, and Lynn Chowatke in the final. And then BCA ended up beating Ontario B in the bronze medal game for the ladies. And then for the men, we had Ontario A winning the championship. So that was Albert Wu, Arnie Markowitz, and Hussein Zion. And they ended up taking BCA in the final. So BCA was Paul Choi, George Mann, and Peter Chung. Third place in the men's division was Saskatchewan as well. So that was Keith Roney, Doug Normand, and Gary Lawrence. So my home province mates. Pretty good results there across the board. Happy to see all across the board, though, that they had that event go. It's, again, same with the Nationals. It was the first time I think we've had the seniors in quite a long time. So it was great to see that all happen there. So you have any thoughts about that event there, Daryl?
Yeah. I was actually keenly interested in it. The Ontario B team was from my club. Unfortunately, they didn't have the best run. I think they were near the bottom of the bottom of the leaderboard, but it was great to see them out there. I'm always interested in all the championships to see who comes out on top, who's playing, what provinces are playing. Um, I think one of the takeaways from this and from all of our championships is there's some strong bowlers out there. There's some great teams. There's some really strong provinces as a whole, but Eastern Canada is always just that tough one to get participation in. And granted, smaller provinces, it's a long way to travel. The funding might not be there, but it would be awesome to see, kind of like we see the baseball World Series. It's not really the world; it's in the States and some of Canada, but to see that full Canadian championship would be kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of, well, me and you had been talking about this behind the scenes there. We saw some comments on, I think it was Bulls Canada's post about the results. Someone from out in the eastern provinces was commenting about how there wasn't anybody from the east, and it's not really a true Canadian championship. So it's an interesting comment, specifically with the mixed pairs and the seniors essentially being a second tier event, like national event, with the changes that Bulls Canada made roughly 6-7 years ago, we'll say, where you can't play in multiple nationals anymore like you used to. It essentially has made the seniors and the mixed pairs essentially like a tier 2 event. And I see it as it gives an ability to sort of the more novice players or people who want to kind of get their foot in the door for competition, or maybe not go that full deep end of the nationals, give it a shot. And so kind of what you're touching on there, it would be an interesting thing to talk about or figure out what exactly is preventing people from playing in the nationals, specifically from those smaller provinces, because it's been a problem for probably about the last 4 or 5 years, even when those changes were made, to get those smaller provinces out, because it's now very rare that you see a Maritimes province, specifically like a New Brunswick, PEI, to see them at nationals. It's pretty rare. So I'm not sure if it's something Bulls Canada maybe should be looking into pretty in depth, or trying to figure out what exactly they could do to maybe alleviate that.
It's an interesting puzzle, I guess. For me personally, and we've chatted about this on the side, but I know there's always that talk about competition, and there's like I don't know if it's a competition development committee or what the actual title of the committee is, but they deal with competition and reviews and putting things in place, like the changes to nationals and mixed and seniors and all that kind of stuff. My thought is it's not a format issue. There's something else, because you could throw everything out and say we're just playing singles, or we're just playing pairs, or we're going to play everything, and I don't think the outcome of like PEI, New Brunswick, Quebec is kind of in that mix, even though you see some of them coming back, where you just don't see them there. And I don't think you could say you could point it to one thing, like, oh, they don't play triples anymore. I've heard people complain about that, and it's like, I don't think that would change it. And I don't think the open singles versus the singles now attached at the end, I don't think that changed anything. So what is the actual answer to get Eastern Canada growing and really participating in this stuff? That's probably a much bigger question than my brain can actually handle.
I said maybe it's something we'll have to have an after dark soon and get some people from
There
out
you
east
go.
to maybe talk about, and really get us the deets about what specifically can maybe happen to improve things. So maybe that's an idea we'll chalk on the board there.
Well, if you're watching out there, or if anybody out there is watching that knows some good people we can talk to from PEI, New Brunswick, we can probably get some people from Nova Scotia, no problem, and then search in Quebec. It would be great to get even just people from those four provinces on the show to discuss it. Like, what is going on in the eastern provinces? What's holding back? Is it the same issue for Quebec, PEI, and New Brunswick, or is it different? And why does Nova Scotia continue to put up solid teams? I mean, you saw it at nationals this year. pairs gold, four silver on the men's side, and multiple other close competitions. They're able to put out some people, even though they still aren't the biggest province out there. They're solid. So what is it exactly that is the key to holding some of these provinces back, or what's going to be the tipping point where we can actually start growing some of these provinces and getting them back in action? Because it would be, and I agree, it would be awesome to see B teams reduce and just have the top team from every province play, and just have it be that.
Yeah, no, can't agree with you more. I look forward to see what will sort of happen down the line, and I would love to have those conversations with people. So we'll definitely keep an eye out or see if we can figure something out here in the coming weeks. If we moving on, I did misspoke when I was doing the results there. So in the chat, Cam McClelland is Eileen McClelland's husband. I said McPherson. So my apologies. The lead on the Saskatchewan women's triples team was Eileen McClelland. I am sorry. So thanks for the correction. If we're moving on, we did sort of allude to there's still results coming in from other provinces, still doing some bowling. I had seen on the Facebook page for Quebec Bowls that they've been running some events over the last couple weekends here. So if we're just going to quickly go over that for next year's nationals, looks like the winner of the men's singles was John Devlin. Ended up taking out Jill Kayer in the final. And then in the women's, it was Songsin Sao. And I believe she took out Anne Morissette in the final. And then it looks like just from yesterday, they had the men's and women's pairs. So again, Anne Morissette ended up winning the pairs with Suzanne Hill. And that men's singles final, I guess, was a pairs team. So Gilles Kayer and John Devlin ended up teaming up. So congrats to everyone involved there. More than happy to pass on results from provinces doing their thing a year in advance. Just a little different than anywhere else out west, but that's good to see that those people will hopefully be representing their provinces or Quebec at nationals next year.
It's exciting. For a while there, you kind of saw Quebec kind of slide out of the picture as far as even just having people there to compete. So seeing some of these results, seeing some of the names come through, seeing two of the guys that I know fairly well from Quebec, David James Smith and Michel Leroux, competing. DJ took sort of a brief time off, and Michelle hadn't been really heavily competing for quite a while. So just awesome to see those guys back, and hopefully that means some good things in the future for Quebec. Like if we can see a little bit of a resurgence, because it would be awesome to see that province start to grow and thrive, because I think it would be a big thing for bowls overall in Canada if some of the bigger provinces like Quebec started to grow a little bit more.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's something that I'm hopeful to see as well, that they a little bit of a resurgence or whatever you want to call it keeps occurring there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on, we got lots of other stuff to cover. I guess we can jump into kind of an easy one. So Commonwealth Games 2026 is in Victoria out in Australia. So the next Com Games is being hosted in Australia, and the announcement was made that bowls will be part of the Commonwealth Games in 2026. So, woo! Like, I think we've covered it a couple times on the show. Bowls was removed from being a core sport. I don't know what the exact term is. About a year ago or something around those lines, it was removed from being a core sport that has to be part of the Commonwealth Games, and it's now dependent on the host nation to determine if they want to have bowls as part of it. So it's not terribly surprising to see Australia continue to keep it in there. Because really, it's probably going to be a few medals for Australia, specifically if they're hosting down in Australia. So it's great to see that that's there, and that's something we can look forward to in 4 years from now.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's what can I say? But Bulls is on shaky ground internationally for stuff. You see changes coming from the UK with like their formats being changed and events being changed just for the current climate. And Commonwealth Games is the same thing. They want sports that they can market, that they can put on TV, advertising, sponsorships. It's all about money and eyeballs and all that kind of stuff. And hate to break it to all our fans out there, but Bulls doesn't necessarily bring in the most eyeballs of all the sports out there. So what can we do to keep it going? We've got the support of our biggest nations, like Australia will keep it in. Countries in the UK will likely keep it in, but we need to somehow make Bulls good enough and enticing enough to have anybody that hosts these kind of events going forward to actually want to take it on and make it a thing.
Yeah, no, the Commonwealth Games, I think, is even on a little bit of a shaky ground, probably with the passing of the Queen. I know I was reading a couple articles talking about how there might be a fairly significant scale back in what actually happens with the Commonwealth Games in the future, because that whole Commonwealth linkage is starting to be something that they're wanting to sort of not abolish, but kind of move away from down the line here. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of happens over the next 4, 8, 12 years, I guess, if we're going every 4 years that it's hosted. As you're sort of saying, I think most of the countries that are putting their names in to host the Commonwealth Games were pretty safe for having them have bowling. As you're sort of saying, the UK, I think South Africa did have it, and they sort of defaulted on the one that just happened. But again, South Africa has lots of bowls greens as well, and I think Canada, we were one of the ones that put a name in for the one that I think Victoria got there. So again, we do have the hopeful nature, but there potentially is countries that could be bidding on it that maybe we don't get bowls in the Commonwealth Games. So shaky ground is a good word for it, Terrell.
Yeah, and there's even been talk that if bowls came to Canada, or not bowls, but Commonwealth Games came to Canada, say like the Hamilton or Victoria, that have kind of thrown their names out for that, there is the potential that bowls wouldn't be part of it. I mean, we're not the biggest sport out here in Canada. We try to represent ourselves well, have our national stuff going on, but the fact is that we don't have a lot of money. We don't have we have some good facilities. We don't have just great internationally known facilities across the country. Our players aren't necessarily that well known outside of some circles in provinces and whatnot. So it is a tough sell no matter how you do it, especially in something like Canada. I wanted to throw this question out to you. We got a question in the chat. Paul Carter, what do you think it would take for to bring the game into prominence?
Yeah, definitely a loaded question. To bring it into prominence for me, I think there has to be an effort to expand the game across the world. As it sits right now, there's kind of like the two focal hubs in the world where bowls is popular, or lots of people play it, and that's essentially the UK and Australia. And those are the two major kind of areas. There's not many countries that bowl. If we kind of go anywhere south of North America and then even Africa, it's kind of all around the bottom part of Africa. I know developing a game like bowls isn't easy because you do need very specific grass surfaces, whatever you want to call it. But I think expanding the game is a key thing. I know Europe, there's been lots of work done in Europe specifically lately. There's been lots of short mat associations, and there's been lots of associations popping up, which is a great thing to see. But I think you kind of need to spread the game out a little more and try and get it into different countries, because I think like a Hong Kong is an example of something where specifically in the last about 10, 15 years here, we've seen lots of growth sort of in the Asia part of bowls. And Hong Kong is a specific one where there's tons and tons of players playing there now. And I think something like a model like that, where just lots of people are playing it, there's lots of options to play it, something like that just needs to keep kind of going all across the world, where you get it to different countries and get people playing it everywhere else, so that if we want to expand to maybe like the Olympics or something along the lines of that down the line, you need more member nations, and that's kind of one of the main obstacles we have as a bowls. Well, bowls as a sport right now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I know the comments in here was about, ultimately it has to become an Olympic sport, but I think it's not a matter of like, oh, it becomes an Olympic sport and everything, like, the floodgates open. If it became an Olympic sport, obviously there'd be more interest. There would be eyeballs from nations that typically dominate the Olympics to want to find a way to get medals in that sport as well. But I don't think it's going to become an Olympic sport until it actually grows and hits that, I don't know, that threshold of, we are actually a pretty good sport. We have a lot of members. We have a lot of nations, like you said, part of it. And even some of the member nations that we have aren't that big. We talked to Hurricane Brown in Jamaica, and they are sending people to compete, but only a couple. And they only have one really facility there right now, and it's something that they're trying to grow, but it's hard. And in Canada, we struggle. We do fairly well for what we have, but we don't get a lot of money in. We don't have a lot of funding. Sponsors, big money sponsors aren't knocking on our door to give us loads of cash to name a indoor facility after them, like the Nike Indoor Bowls Association or whatever it is. It comes down to finding money, trying to build some stuff, especially for a lot of countries, an indoor. For us, it would help. We could keep the game going year round. We could transition people in and out of indoor, outdoor, and they get interested in indoor, you can present them to the outdoor. They get interested in outdoor, you can present them to the indoor and say, hey, this is a way to keep your game going. And, go ahead, get outdoors, try a different format, all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, in Canada, because we are not for profit, we are volunteer based, we are grinding it out with most of our clubs just to break even and not lose money and keep our spark going. We're at treading water most of the time, so trying to get ahead where we can actually start growing and really busting down the doors and finding ways to promote this sport, it's tough. We don't have what the UK has right now with like the BBC and WBT and televising national sports and some really good facilities. We don't have Australia, where it's it's a for-profit industry. It might not be massively huge, but people get paid. They've got massive clubs, world-class facilities. So tough. I don't know where the answer lies exactly.
Yeah, no, I think when I said loaded question, that's there's so many weird kind of tangents you can go off on it, but it's kind of a combo of what we've sort of got into there. Is there has to be more people playing it across the world, and then major sponsorship is a huge obstacle, because if we're talking about the heyday, or when bowls was more popular back, if we're going back to the 80s, Mazda was the sponsor, I believe, of like the world indoor championship. So
Right.
when you have a major car company or something like that, even like Tetley Tees sponsoring back in the day too, those major sponsorships would obviously significantly help to bring the standard of things up. So I think it's something that can be worked on. There is lots of potential for it down the line, and I think it's just something that's solutions are going to have to be found if we really do want to kind of increase its status across the world.
Interesting comment here. In curling, the change to make mixed doubles an Olympic curling sport was a huge change. Countries with a small talent pool could field a team of two. It's a good point. So we've had some discussions on the show before, and I've seen a lot of debates over things online about um, changing formats, changing rules. I mean, we've added the respot for certain reasons. We've added sets for certain things. You know, 4 bowl pairs down to 3 bowl pairs, 3 bowl triples down to 2 bowl triples to try to speed the game up and make it a little more interesting. Um, how far do we go, and what makes sense to actually drive interest to our sport? You know, um, do you change it to some mixed stuff? Do you change it to some open stuff? What actually makes sense? It's a whole can of worms that you could open, and depending on which worm you grab, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. I'm not quite sure what the answer is for that.
That's an interesting concept to maybe try a different format or create some sort of quick hitting game to allow sort of more players playing from smaller countries. So I know if you've ever watched the mixed curling, it's kind of a different format where they have a guard already there, and there's a rock in the house and everything like that too. So it's a lot more of a quick hitting game. There's, I guess, more volatility to the point scoring and everything too. So I don't know, maybe that's something that Daryl can go and dream up in his shop there and give us a new game that we can maybe market to the world and revolutionize bowls.
We got some cool stuff out there. BPL, UBC, WBT, they all hold their spot for at least some innovation, some excitement, where they hold their pockets of viewers, which is really cool. After this next little thing we wanted to share, I wanted to have a chat about what's missing in Canada. So if I move on to just getting out this last bit of information, which is the Australian Nationals are going on right now. They have a long back-to-back schedule, which is massive. I mean, here in Canada, we split everything up amongst months, a week here, a week there, a week here, and across provinces. But they, for this one, for instance, they threw it all at Broad Beach, which is a massive club in Australia. But they just went with massive teams. So they did a champion and champion first. Then it was senior sides, which is state. So seniors from all the states across Australia come in and play against each other for state bragging rights, basically. Then they have a regular sides, which doesn't include that senior caveat of you have to be a senior. And they do sides. And then they do their nationals. They have their under 18 mixed in there. Their parables are mixed in there. So it's just a lot of people, massive amount of bowls going on. But one of the things that really intrigued me was the sides. Like some of the results. So on their sides, they have what they call an alley shield, which is the men's side, kind of like is it Cy English kind of idea for Canadian nationals. Queensland won that. There was I think it's Marriage Morris. I might be getting that wrong. The Morris Trophy, let's say, for the women, New South Wales won that, and then the overall trophy, New South Wales won. But every state from across Australia comes and competes in this, and they play in every type of discipline that you can imagine, and play it, state against state, and they just keep a round robin until someone comes out on top. And for me, one of the things that's missing in Canada, and why I wanted to bring this up, was there's a lot of club pride, provincial pride stuff that's missing, I think, in our game. Like I cheer on Saskatchewan. If you're from Saskatchewan, I may cheer on Ontario because I'm from Ontario, but I don't see it as much. It's kind of a loose, like, oh, I'm from Saskatchewan, so I'll cheer on the Saskatchewan, rather than there being this huge provincial pride. Champions are recognized. You get a huge uproar when one province wins or something like that. I think that kind of idea from Canada is really missing, where we have that inherent pride and we want to take our province, say Ontario, and beat everybody else. I don't know if that made sense.
No, makes sense. It's something I've touched on in the past on the show. Like I've maintained that I think the grassroots in Canadian bowls is dead. There's been very little work or attention paid to sort of the grassroots levels of bowls and sort of having that club pride and that provincial pride and sort of building up and I guess being like I just have that feeling inside of you that you are your champion and that there's some sort of deep camaraderie within the provinces because there's not really any sort of programming in a lot of provinces. And like I can speak for Saskatchewan specifically, we literally almost have no tournaments ever. And we rarely see the people from other clubs. So it's you're literally just playing within your own club is kind of how it works here, except for our provincials. So I think there has to be definitely an attempt to do something what you're seeing there in Australia, where I would love a five-a-side event, sort of what you're saying. Maybe even let's abolish the nationals as we see it now, have a five-a-side where the province sends their top five players, however that's determined, and you go play in the events, sort of as you're saying. I think something like that still gives you a very good event where you're going to get your top players playing against each other, and then it's definitely going to build that pride of your province because you're going to be playing with different people other than just playing an entire round robin with your pairs team and trying to win gold on your own and then maybe cheering for your teammates on the side type of thing. I think this definitely would encourage people to be more friendly with one another from their provinces, play together, build relationships, and sort of try and develop people, everything like that. I think it's just all across the board. It's great for development and bringing the sport along.
Yeah, I've watched, and I haven't done it for super long, but the year prior to COVID and this year, I was really keenly watching some of the stuff coming out about the Australian sides because it really intrigued me. You see the teams that they put in there, and every state has a load of people. If you go onto Bulls Australia Facebook page and just scroll through the team photos, they posted just this state, that state. It's a lot of people, so that wouldn't happen in Canada. We have a tough enough time trying to field groups and have funding for groups and all the costs associated with that. But five-a-side, I'm all for. I would love to see a five-a-side somewhere in whatever format it is. I think five-a-side is something that is exciting and is missing from Canada. On top of that, somewhere, sometime, somehow, I would love to see us bring into existence one of the masterboard type of events where it's bigger teams and you split them up however you want. You maybe have a team captain or coach or whatever that forms how your teams are going to play. And then you have the masterboard where it's not just you win, you lose, and you win the gold, and then that's great for you. Maybe you cheer on everybody else, but you have that overall team goal of we need to beat all these other teams. So you're keenly watching other teams, you're cheering them on. What happens 3 ranks down with one of your teams really affects what happens up here. So you're, that whole camaraderie, team build up kind of stuff really matters. And I think that would be a really exciting thing to have in Canada. Size might be an issue, but I think it would be really cool to see anyway.
Yeah, like I guess a lot of the Premier Leagues that you're seeing kind of is more of a micro version of what we're sort of seeing. It's just within your province, you're getting the different clubs. And I think that's honestly a good start to what we're talking about is if your province doesn't have Alberta has a Premier League. Ontario had the Premier League. I don't know if you guys are running it anymore.
We didn't have one this year, so who knows?
But again, they're very good ways to sort of build camaraderie, build that level of the game. And I think it's something that I'm going to try and pursue out in Saskatchewan too, because it gets you to play more, it gets you to play against everyone. And builds up that level play. And if we could get it someday nationally, that would be really cool. I think it'd be fun to have an event like that. And then even if you threw the Canadian development team in there, I don't know what you want to call it, but if you're looking for ways to get our national team even involved in it too, I don't think people would object to playing against a developmental national team at that type of a thing too. And it's just, there's lots of options and lots of things that can be easily used with that format to make it great.
Absolutely. I'm one thing that I've thought about over a number of years, and this is before we had the show, before we had everything else. I hated, or I used to hate anyway, teams that were locked in, and especially in some provinces, you'd see the same group playing with each other every single time, and you wouldn't see new members crack in. I know younger players had such a tough time trying to find a team that was competitive, that would bring them up and teach them stuff. I see more of it now. But for instance, myself coming up when I was younger, and I'm old and washed now, but when I was younger, I had a hell of a time trying to find a team to play. I had people that would play with me, and that was great. But you basically had to go out and build your team, or beg for a spot, or just fit yourself into a team. And who knows if you really wanted to play on that Forest team? You may have wanted to play with one person because you were great friends, but the other two, who knows? But really trying to find those teams that would nurture young people, bring in new people, get new competitors into the mix. I always found that a tough time. So something like this, where it's a whole bunch of great players, and you can bring in junior developmental players, you can bring in whoever, and then mix them up based on skill set and who will do really well. I think that would be super interesting, and I think it would intrigue new people and new competitors and people trying to rise in those ranks, to really try this out and see what the higher level of competition is like in Canada, without having to go the road of, well, you're not anything until you've won a national championship, or you're not anything until you've won your provincial championship. At least it gives them an outlet to get that experience and then say, now go out and do great things.
Yeah, no, I can't agree with you anymore. When I look back at my bowling career, there's essentially two things that I kind of look back that got me interested or wanted me to continue playing. And one of them is my first real competitive tournament I played with my dad and brother when I was, I think, 11 or 12 years old. Obviously, they're both older than me and they're both more experienced bowlers. And so then take me into a tournament and I see how to play and I see who these players are in our provincials, sort of get to play against them, see how I stack up and everything. And so it sort of lets you get that experience, measure yourself against those players, and then really see where you need to go from there and move forward and try and make yourself a better player, or sort of strive for something. So yeah, agree with you wholeheartedly, Daryl.
Well, if for anybody that's listening, for anybody that's watching, I'm definitely calling out all you top level bowlers that play with the same people all the time. Go out and grab a young guy. Go out and grab somebody that's up and coming. Take them into a few tournaments. Take them into a provincial championship. Even if you want to play with the best of the best, give them that experience. Even if it's a one shot, show them what it's like. Take them out there. Give them that chance to compete and keep their interest going. There's a lot of great bowlers out there that really stick to that nest of people that they always play with because they're used to it. They're good with them. They win. Try branching out a bit. I think it only helps the game out. And yeah, I'm talking to you guys.
I don't know if you're talking to me specifically.
Maybe.
but I feel like called out or something here, Daryl. All right. I guess we were gonna apologize because we were typically on a bi-weekly podcast and we skipped a week because somebody went and gallivanted off to the East Coast. How dare you go to the East Coast and try and spread coaching across the Canadian landscape there, Daryl?
It was great. I'm not a big fan of travel right now. Airports are awful. I'll just say that right now. I went and the mask mandate was still on the Friday I left, and I think that next day the mandate was off. It was like a weird transition. So coming back was just a wild west free for all in the airport. People were confused whether they had to wear a mask or not, and where and how. It was awful. Um, but going to Nova Scotia, I went out there to teach or run the performance coach module for Bulls Canada, the Bulls specific module for that. Basically, like that level 3, there's club coach, competition coach, and then performance coach. So I was doing the performance coach. I'm a facilitator. I go out and teach those kind of courses to coaches that want to learn that next step. It was great. I think we were supposed to have 12. I think we had 11. Someone couldn't come at the last minute, but a great group of coaches. Some I knew just from the competitive side, and others I hadn't met before. But it was great to see their interest in coaching and coaching those that are going to provincials, nationals, and then possibly even international. All I can say is, for all the provinces out there, for any provincial association members, board directors that are listening to the show, get out there and start getting these courses into your province. Start getting these level of coaches into the mix. Someone might take the performance coach workshop, do some of the modules, and say it's not for me, and stick with competition or whatever. That's good. That's cool. But at least they've been exposed to the performance. For those that want to move on, we are, and I'll say it's like a steep bottleneck. There's the club coach group that's out there. Then it gets really sharp into the competition, and then even tinier at that very top of the performance coach. And we need more trained and certified coaches up there, helping our bowlers get to that international level and beyond. It's not necessarily the easiest road. It's not the cheapest, depending on what province you're in and if you have to pay for stuff yourself. But all I can say is coaching helps your province immensely in so many ways. Having good coaching mentors for those coming up in coaching, to those that are already there, all sorts of good stuff. And for those provinces out there, go out, get myself or someone else that's certified to run these courses, to do the courses and get people going on competition and performance coach. We need them out there. You need them in your province. We need them for bowls, period. Coaching just helps in so many ways. So get out there and do that. And kudos on Nova Scotia for getting me out. They were supposed to get me out before COVID, and then COVID hit and everything got canceled. They pursued it every year while COVID was on, making sure that they were still on the schedule, and they got me over there. And I couldn't be happier with how it went. And I think Nova Scotia was happy with getting a whole bunch of coaches through that course as well.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to hear that they actually have coaching development going on, because I know I'm a frustrated person out in Saskatchewan trying to get my certifications for, I'm still at the competition level, I guess. I'm kind of waiting for my final steps, but it's difficult to find someone to certify yourself. And like I've even started on that performance part of it as myself here. But again, it's good that they took that initiative and made it happen, because as you're saying, there's no better way to sort of help people develop and sort of target what you want bowls to become in your province than to have those high level coaches available and out there for the players.
Yeah, and I can say some of the best conversations, some of the best insights to how provinces work and what people are expecting are the outside conversations. So you have the course, you're doing coursework, you're answering questions and doing some practical stuff, but you have your breaks and you have your lunch and you have your after hours, and the conversations that you have with players or with the coaches outside of that can sometimes be just eye-opening, not only for me, but for the coaches there, where you can answer some specific questions that you may not cover in the course, or questions about a player that they've been working with that they just can't figure out how to help, and so on. It's the course itself is really cool. The outside conversation is really cool, and then getting together with coaches that are like-minded is really cool as well. So there's a lot of great stuff that can come out of it.
Awesome. All right. So I guess was that everything we wanted to cover here today, Daryl?
One last thing.
Ooh.
I'll just say we covered it on the show. I think you guys covered it on the show last time. The bidding deadline for Bulls Canada. It's coming up again, but they actually extended the bidding deadline to October 16th to get your bids in for Canadian Championships, national events. Can't stress this enough. If your club is interested, if you have the volunteer base, and I'll say some good greens or adequate greens at the least, go out and bid for them. You can make money, you can get exposure, you can get media. It's how you do it. If you do it right, it can be awesome for your club. And we've done it in the past at my club back in 2019, and it was huge. It started the ball rolling for a lot of stuff. We've got grants coming in and a whole bunch of stuff, and a lot of it was a catalyst from the Canadians getting a little bit of money in so we could actually do some things. So get those bids in. You've got until October 16th. Every championship is out there. So really think about it. Get your bids in. And that's I guess all I can say about that.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that is everything we wanted to cover, Daryl. I'm not missing something now.
No, I think you're good.
Okay. Well, that was a good show. It's good to see you again. Guess we're, as I said, winding down here. We do have the last indoor event coming up soon, so we'll maybe have some event or info from that. But before we go, reminder just to like, comment, subscribe if you are here. We do appreciate any sort of support you give us here over the YouTube. It's great for us some days. Yeah, well, if that's all we got for today, then I guess we'll wrap it up and may all your Bulls be touchers.